I want to welcome everybody back to Randi Sands and the Mediumship crew. And we'd like to send out a special hello to the newcomers. We hope you enjoy it here and that you choose to come back. The Mediumship crew is a place where we're committed to bringing you guys serious content while we're having fun. So you may see us laughing and joking. Don't think the content's not serious, all right? Today is June 8th. And this is the 9th episode. And tonight's episode is on the history of spiritualists. And before we get started, we have a little unfinished business to take care of. We have a raffle that we have to finish up. So let me do that really quick here.
Yay.
And let's see who the lucky winner is as I'm tossing cans everywhere. Let's see. Christine Buttigieg. Congratulations. You just got the piece of kyanite crystal. So that is taken care of. And we have a special guest with us tonight, you guys. And Stacy, I'm not even going to say your last name because I'm going to butcher it. Well, no, I'll try. How's that? Stacy Schuerman Kopchinski.
It was perfect.
Woo! Today is my day, let me tell you. So we'll go through some basics and Stacy will go through the history of spiritualists. We have the crew with us. We also have Lisa, another one of my students that's with us tonight. And then we'll take questions from anybody out there that has questions. And before we get started, what I'd like to do is kind of go over some basics. And I'd like to start by saying that spiritualism is the science, the philosophy, and the religion of continuous life based on demonstrated facts of communication by means of mediumship. Okay? And to go further, a spiritualist is one who believes as a basis of their religion in the communication between this world and the spirit world. All right. And I think it would also be a good idea, Stacy, what do you think, to go over the what it is and what it does?
Absolutely.
All right, you want to go one for one? You take one, I'll take one?
Absolutely.
All right, because you know what? I didn't want to forget, so I have my manual.
Cheater,
Look at
Woohoo! And by the way, everybody, Stacy is a board member of NSAC. You want to tell them what NSAC is first?
Sure. So NSAC is the National Spiritualist Association of Churches. It's one of the longest running organized groups for spiritualism, for modern spiritualism. So we have churches and camps throughout the US and have been alive and kicking since 1893, actually a little bit before that, but we'll talk about that when we get to the history. So just, yeah, group of individuals, group of spiritualists, fantastic.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
All right, so you want to take the first one, I'll take the second, and we'll just go back and forth?
Sure,
all right.
Absolutely. So
let's do it.
What spiritualism is and what it does really for all of us or each individual that labels themselves a spiritualist. It teaches personal responsibility. That's my favorite.
Right? I have a few of them. It removes all fear of death, which is really the portal of the spirit world. That's one of my favorites.
That's a good one. It teaches that death is not the cessation of life, but merely a change of condition.
Right? Like a caterpillar to a butterfly. It teaches not that we have a soul, but we are a soul and we have a body.
That's a good one. That we are spiritual beings now, even while encased in flesh.
Yeah. That as we sow on earth, we'll reap in the life to come. Oh, now my students will tell you that I am concerned with that one all the time. I'm like, yeah, I don't need any more bad stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That though who have passed on or made their transition to the spirit world are conscious and not asleep.
Oh, I like that one.
Right? The communion between the living and the dead is scientifically proved.
Mm-hmm. I think we might have two different manuals, so I hope I'm not intruding.
That's okay.
It thus brings comfort to the bereaved and heals, well, I say alleviates sorrow, it says here, alleviates sorrow, but it heals too.
We're on point with the manuals.
Okay, perfect, good.
Spiritualism is a science, philosophy, and religion of continuous life based upon the demonstrated facts of communication between mediumship with those who live and in the spiritual world, which we covered kind of.
Absolutely. It brings to the surface our spiritual attributes, such as inspiration, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and healing powers.
And it teaches that the spark of divinity dwells in all.
Mm-hmm. That as a flower gradually unfolds in beauty, so the spirit of humanity unfolds and develops in the spirit spheres.
The spiritualism is God's message, and we can change that to source for anybody that's sensitive to that, but it's written God, so that's how I'm going to put it. Spiritualism is God's message to mortals declaring that there is no death, that all who have passed on still live, that there is hope in the life beyond for the most negative. Oh boy. Some people should be real happy.
That gives me hope.
that every soul will progress through the ages to heights sublime and glorious, where God is love and love is God. Again, God in the general term.
It is a manifestation, a demonstration, and a proof of the continuity of life and of the truth of the many spirit manifestations recorded in the Christian Bible.
Correct. It demonstrates that many spiritual attributes with which humanity is endowed, but which through want of knowledge have been allowed to lie dormant or through prejudice have been violently or unjustly suppressed.
Woohoo! And that's that. And now we get to do what we all want, which is we get to open the floor for Stacy to start talking about the history of spiritualists.
Oh my goodness. This is like my favorite topic of all time. I don't even know where to start. So I'll start with what, as modern spiritualism, because spiritualism is a huge term. Like that's a long term. You can look up spiritist, spiritualism, and you'll get a lot of ancient beliefs, right? As long as man or woman has been around, we have always been trying to communicate or understand what's next after this life, right? So there's been numerous, religious beliefs, spiritual beliefs that have led, that all talk about spirit communication. But we consider ourselves modern spiritualists or modern spiritualism, which brings us to kind of up and around the events that we're going to talk about that happened March 31st. But before that, I want to just kind of dig in a little bit about a few people who, to me, set the pathway for us to get where we want and where we are, and hopefully will lead us into the future. But we, in one of the favorite people that we talk about, or that I really love, and a lot of people talk about, is Andrew Jackson Davis.
Yes.
Yes, right? A lot of people talk about him, and he's actually considered the father of modern spiritualism. However, he was never a spiritualist.
Right.
Fun fact, right?
That's crazy, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we have Swedenborg, and we have, Mesmer, my whole focus is on Andrew Jackson Davis, because that man just seemed to really basically put himself out there and say, this is what I do. This is where I receive the information from, and I'm not going to apologize for it. And to me, he really lived, in a very much connected to spirit world, right? And he was to me, one of the main forerunners of our move. I like to think of spiritualism. Yes, it's a science, a philosophy, and a religion, but I also like to think of modern spiritualism as a movement, because we're not based on one sole person. Like we talk about Mother Ann Lee, who was obviously the creator of the Shakers, and what they did, they also opened the doorway for that communication, right? They would actually connect to spirit in such a way. And, so all of them kind of set the way for us. And then it was really a collective that has turned this now into the science, philosophy, and religion of modern spiritualism because of the events of March 31st, 1848. But I always have to give out a shout out to Andrew Jackson Davis, because the best thing, if you're intrigued at all about spiritualism, in the philosophy aspect, he brought forth one of the best philosophies that we could try to instill in our active daily life. He, in a connection and attunement to spirit, had his spirit guide, Galen, bring forth this, under all circumstances, keep an even mind. It's actually a little bit bigger than that. It says, behold, here is thy magic staff. Not like in the physical, like a magic staff, but like in the spiritual magic staff. And it says, believe in it, walk with it, lean on it, talk with it, believe in it forever. Under all circumstances, keep an even mind. And I think that is profound, because what is even?
Yeah.
Nothing around my house. Okay.
And it really makes you think, right? And I probably am an overreactor, I realize, because I don't know if I ever even know what even is ever.
Well, and it changes from moment to moment.
Exactly. So, and he actually had a premonition of what happened March 31st, 1848, which is really what we call the advent of modern spiritualism. So everything prior to that date is, we consider it either ancient or, spiritualism. That's why we put the word modern in front of it. Modern for 1848, right? That's not that long ago, long enough. So many people believe spiritualism is something that was just created in the 70s or the 80s during the big New Age metaphysical run, but it hasn't. It's been around forever. And I think Randi likes to share. She has a knowledge of the Fox sisters.
Oh, I love the Fox family.
Yeah, and the whole family of March. Like, again, the spiritualism, or the ancient spiritualism, was kind of this not knowing where the communication came from. They assumed it was gods or magic or supernatural, or, they didn't really know where the communication was coming from. They communicated, but they didn't know who they communicated with. And that's what really separates us, right? Modern spiritualism, that continuity of life, is identifying who the spirit is, who the loved one is. So that's why it's really important when we do mediumship, which I'm sure I'm sure all of you will agree with, that we prove the continuity of life.
That's why evidentiary mediumship is so important, because how do you demonstrate without evidence?
Right, exactly. So, and what happened in the Fox Cottage on March 31st, 1848, which again, I probably say 800 million times, but it's a date that just lives in my mind forever. Is that proof of continuity of life, not knowing who was bringing through this information from the spirit side of life.
So should we give them a little information on the Fox family?
I think it's the perfect time to dive into March 31st,
1848.
Okay, so the Fox family consisted, well, there were more kids, but the people from everything I've seen that actually were in the home was John D. Fox, his wife, Margaret. They had a daughter named Katie or Kathy or Catherine. I mean, they changed their names like water back then. It just depended on which way the wind was blowing. And then there was a daughter also named Margaret and went by Maggie, depending on what text you're looking at. And they moved into a cottage on, I believe it was December 11th, 1847. And they started experiencing unexplainable knocking in a room. And, you know, they hunted high and low, trying to find the source of this. And there was just no explanation. And it was disturbing the entire family to the point that the wife started feeling like she was actually getting sick from lack of sleep. And then on the date that Stacy liked so much, that's when not only did their lives change in a way that was unforeseen, but the entire, as far as I'm concerned, world changed.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was the knocking started, and the kids were so terrified that they were sleeping in the room with their parents. And we'll call her Katie. She called him the spirit, Mr. Splitfoot, which I haven't really understood why, but she did. And she said, Mr. Splitfoot, do as I do. And she started tapping. Well, Mr. Splitfoot, which was not Mr. Splitfoot, we'll get into who he was in a minute, started tapping right back with her. So then the sister Margaret, or Maggie, she said, do as I do. And she started tapping like numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4. And he was matching her. Okay. So that's when they started inviting the neighbors in. And they all started asking questions, and it was tapping, and they were getting all this crazy information, right? And the next thing you knew, they had like 300 people at the house. So the tapping was from a, I guess we would call him a peddler, that was named Charles B., and I hope I don't butcher his name, Rosna. And he was murdered in the house by the owners. He was acquainted with the owners, and he was murdered in his sleep for money. I believe it was to the tune of like $500. And the house was later destroyed on, I want to say September 21st, 1955 by fire. Okay.
Well, it was moved. It was moved from its original location.
Oh, it was. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, its original location is in Hydesville. That's why in England it's called Hydesville Day. They'll call it, like we call it the Advent of Modern Spiritualism. But yeah, it was moved from Hydesville to Lilydale, which is one of the biggest, largest spiritualist camps.
Right. And one piece of literature that I love regarding this topic is this one right here.
Mm-hmm.
This one is neat because it has accounts of all the people that live there, the neighbors, like everybody documented everything. And this is like kind of like a compilation. So, and now Stacy has more. Then I think what we'll do is we'll open up the floor and, you know, have people ask questions.
Sure. Well, I can add I'll talk a little bit about the movement. I mean, we could talk for days and hours if we really want to talk about the people, because after 300 people were showing up, can you imagine? Try to picture yourself one in 1848, right? There is like no Zoom, there is no Facebook, there's practically not a newspaper. It takes so long, so how that word spread, like it's
Paul
really,
Revere.
because I'm telling you, I have been to the location of the original Hydesville cottage. It is country, you guys. There is not like, there is no, there's not like 100 farmhouses all around. I mean, this is really vacant land. So to have 300 people travel by horse and buggy to come and witness this, it didn't take long to spread, right? The word got out that there was these wrappings, this communication with the other side. And again, because of a lot of wars, spiritualism also became very, like it rose as the wars were going on, because mediums were connecting family members with their loved ones, because there was such, huge amount of transition, or what, death taking place, that the mediums were able to communicate. So what ended up happening, which I think is fantastic, and I'll throw out a few names, and you can't, there's a lot in this brain, and I'm not guaranteeing 100% accuracy, but I can at least So the sisters, and again, think about the sisters, because, Randi, how old were they? There's some question about how old they were. Some say 10 and 12, some say, 14 and...
Yeah, and 11.
Age 11. But think about that, 14 and 11, right? Girls going out to demonstrate mediumship in front of all of these people. Mm-hmm. And in Rochester, New York, which is close to kind of Hydesville, not extremely close, but close enough, was the Post, Amy and Isaac Post. And if you study them, they were huge into free thinking. That's like spiritualism started with a bunch of support from different free thinkers, right? So these were suffragettes. These were people trying to abolish slavery. These were people who were for equal love, equal rights, all of this. And the Post family took in the Fox sisters because, and actually, trying to remember now, the Post family were huge in helping the suffragettes, the abolishment of slavery. There was someone who would publish newspapers on anti-slavery in their attic in Rochester. So they took in the Fox sisters, and the Fox sisters started demonstrating in like a public hall in Rochester. And that's when it really, they couldn't figure out these wrappings. They were still happening. It's like they were still happening when the sisters traveled, and they were, sadly, like anything, because they were like, oh, this could be trickery. They were stripped down, again, 1848, and girls and women stripped down to their skivvies. So there's no
skivvies.
Well, those they were, but they were, how humiliating, but they believed so much in their communication that they stood in their truth. And that really just started this gargantuan movement. And people heard of it. You can go and research old newspapers, and right from that, like 1849 to, as early as 1920s, you can find significant research in spiritualism and spiritualists. There were camps popping up all over the United States where people would collectively come together. They were for religious freedom. These, and there's, like I said, we could pick a pioneer a day, and it'd probably take us 30 years.
And can I say something? When you just said something about religious freedom, I've had people tell me, well, but I'm Catholic, or I'm Jewish, or I'm this, or I'm that. Oh, Joanne said Corinthian Hall.
Right. Yeah. Corinthian Hall was the first meeting, correct?
And, I tell them, as a minister, I say, you know what? You can still be that. This is like an extension of, because all religions that I can think of off the top of my head believe in life after death.
Yeah.
So why should we not be able to communicate with our loved ones? I say, what kind of a horrible thing would life after death be if we're to be ripped away from our loved ones? Totally. If that's the case, you can keep it. I don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and really we formed, if you really think about, so we have all these mediums and this thought process, right, of defining not God as a man sitting above a cloud, but God as a consciousness, an energy, a source, which we're all part of, and that we don't die, that we do live on. Just that statement right there should really knock your socks off, because that's going to start asking all these questions about, well, then why am I here? And what do I do next? And how do I do this? And, you know, and that brings in the philosophy. But we actually formed as a religion to actually protect the demonstration of mediumship, because it was we as a collective group of spiritualists, these people who believe in communication and demonstration through mediumship, were in the 10s, 20s, 30s of thousands between, 1850 and 1910. It was really starting to basically sweep across the country. And it was at one point one of the three major religions for just, a short moment in time. But then what happened is all these mediums were getting arrested for doing this because, I don't want to, my personal opinion, I'll say that because that leaves open for my own truth, which Spiritualism always says, seek your own truth. That's what I love about it. Other religions were seeing how popular or how much we involved everyone and so then they had to kibosh it, right?
They were threatened.
So they kibosh it, like you were saying too, Randi, before, Catholic, I grew up Catholic. And, to me, it's very comforting when somebody says to me, oh my gosh, a cardinal came on my feeder this morning and I know it was my grandpa, or, I think it was a message from my grandpa. And I just say, you know what, I don't think I know, because I believe that's communication. So I just know that it is, and you can blend it. Why not? But I love the fact that in spiritualism, mediumship is for those, everyone can do it if they take the determination to do it, the work to do it, the continual learning to do it, the self-work that is needed to do it. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of self-work in this.
And you know what? You're looking at 4 of my students. And you guys, what do I say all the time?
Work harder.
What else? Daily practice.
Meditation, prayer.
Patience, prayer.
Yeah.
And practice your mediumship.
Yeah.
Every day.
Because if you don't, it's like a muscle. If you don't use it, it's not going to get stronger.
Absolutely. And these thousands upon tens of thousands of people went outside of their comfort zone. They stood in their truth, and they paved the way for us to now stand in ours. And I feel like now we have to do our part. We do have a healing prayer. I'm sure, like I see you shaking your head. And my favorite line of that healing prayer is, I will do my part. And we have big shoes to keep replacing, because I could list tons of people right now off the top of my head, all of these pioneers. And really, if you're interested, I think it's a great idea to learn who they are. Learn who Cora Richmond was, learn who Emma Harding Britton was, learn who Moses Hall was, learn who Morris Pratt is, but then there's millions upon millions more of that, which is so interesting. You're in Florida, right? I think most of you are in Florida, but
no, I am.
Okay, you're in Florida. Okay. But there were camps, people started to gather and develop this mediumship, right? Before we became a science, philosophy, and religion, 1893, right? Like firm with the government. We are an acknowledged religious organization. Our sunflower is our religious symbol, no cross for us. We're just a big bright sunflower. But we are, and and so many people paved that way for us. I just am fascinated learning about, just for a minute, I'll digress off of this topic, but they were suffragettes, they were pioneers, they were truth seekers, and they were not afraid to say it. They were not afraid to stand in their truth, and they were really inspirations for us all. Like, I just came across this woman named Rosalind Moore from Wisconsin, because I'm doing the history of Wisconsin. We have a camp that's been here since early, late 1800s. Oh yeah, Wisconsin, every state
Really?
used to have dozens of churches, dozens of spiritualist churches. Some of them belong to the NSAC. There's different organizations. You know, there were different, there's the Independent Spiritualist Association. There's the American Federation of Spiritualists. There's the International Spiritualist Federation. There's all these different groups,
Right.
but they all believe in modern spiritualism. And they all paved the way at somehow. I mean, I look back in Wisconsin's history, we had 22 churches in its prime day, 22 spiritualist churches. I don't know how many, but there's a lot of states that there's not even one now. But yet it brings so much comfort. Look at everything that we just read that spiritualism does for us. So we just have to get out there.
Well, and look at Florida, for example. My church is the only spiritualist church south of like the Orlando area. And mine just opened at the beginning of the year, and then, you know, all this hit. So it's shut down right now. But right now it's the only one south of the Orlando area.
Yeah.
And it is a movement. And in my opinion, it's a movement that we need to pick back up the pace to where we were before, because when I take a look at the world needs it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't know about anybody else's, but I got to tell you something funny. Remember you said, you know, your kids and you never know what they could say. Well, I'm sitting here watching and somebody walked behind somebody in a towel.
I am sorry. You know, I got
No, it's funny.
I'm trying to tell him to stop.
And I was gonna say, as a fellow mother, I can see Lisa going,
Yeah.
We're telepathically catching up. You're hearing
right
audiently.
I just started chuckling, so I had to say why, because if somebody was watching and they saw me chuckling for no reason, I just had to throw that in there.
I love it.
So what we're going to do is we're going to open up the floor now for any questions. So I can tell right off the bat that George has probably got a few, because I've been watching his face and he's been in deep contemplation.
I have a million questions, but I don't want to always be first. Somebody else can start off, or we can, I mean, however you want to do it.
Well, your face was priceless, so you go first.
Oh man, where do I go? Let me see here. Well, let's talk a little bit about, I mean, we talk about it being every day that we have to practice, right? And, you know, one thing that fascinates me is that as you practice and you get better and better, that you tend to make the connection a lot quicker, and you tend to go up a lot quicker. At least that's what I call it. Are there things that we've learned from the past that can help people, I want to call it expedite, but accelerate their abilities? Because I know a lot of people that come into, you know, that know they have this gift and that come into learning it always want to know, like, how do I do it quicker? Well, is there a way? I know that it's going to be time. It's going to take time. It's going to take dedication. But since we have this all on the Zoom, I thought that would be a pretty cool question, because I think that's one that's on a lot of people's minds.
Hey, Stacy, let's do it together. You ready?
No. You know, I don't think there's ever a way for quicker. Like, I think it's one of the things that spiritualism you hear, or you'll continue to hear continuously, is it's a living religion. So the more you live it, then the more maybe easier it gets, but
maybe.
Maybe, right? You know, when you're talking about, if you're talking about connecting to spirit for oneself, right? And understand, when that door opens, when you get a message that has proved beyond a doubt that your loved one is still in existence, that is like opening Pandora's box. You can't get enough of it. You are like researching every single thing that you can find. You are trying to digest, and do, and it works, maybe.
And that's when you become a message grabber.
Grabber.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we could talk about mediumship dependency, but that's not history. But you know, most of these people, and you look at some of the great mediums, right? Lenora Piper, you look at Marjorie Crandon, you know, we look at, you know, the Bang sisters, we look at some of these amazing mediums. They worked every day. They worked every day. Not worked like, let me give you messages. They worked on themselves. They sat with spirit for no other reason than just to sit.
And worked on their mediumship too, because again, it's a muscle. And if you go to the gym every day and you're lifting weights and you're lifting weights and you're lifting weights, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get bigger, you're going to run faster, whatever it is. And mediumship is the same way. Not only do you have to have the daily practice, which, as you guys know, that's the meditation, what have you, but you also need to practice your mediumship frequently.
Yep.
Yeah. And mediumship's a big word. There's a lot of different styles and types of mediumship. If you're a spiritualist healer, you're a medium. If you're giving evidential mediumship, you're a medium. If you're, true trance work, true physical work, if you're doing that type of phenomena in mediumship, you're a medium. I mean, any of that is all different. There's all these different, I always call them spokes in the umbrella, there's the umbrella's mediumship, but there's a lot of different sections and
animal communication.
Yeah. And there's a lot of work. You got to work every day. I don't know. I mean, wouldn't it be great if there was a cheat sheet? I always think that too. But I find the more we study, the less we know, which is fantastic though. You get to be okay with that because, you don't get tunnel vision. Spiritualism, when we formed, I know I always go back to the history. I'm so sorry, but that's just me. But when we formed, there were these huge conventions with hundreds of people trying to decide what we were going to portray ourselves like out in the real world. What do we want to be? What do we want to look like? What do we want people to think about us? And the main thing was the continuation of life. That was the most important thing, was that everybody realized that we are just, temporary having a human experience and that we go on. And then it was not putting any type of dogma, creed, or box around how you get there, or how you, God, how we said it with using the term God, source, consciousness, whatever. There was not that, it was just that we just didn't want to get tunnel visioned, and they, right. They were brothers and sisters in a room. And I'm sure, I always wish I could go back and be a fly on the wall, because can you imagine? It's hard enough when you have 10 people and a couple people believe this and a couple people believe that and a couple people believe that, to kind of find that middle ground. Can you imagine hundreds?
Oh, girl, you can go back all you want. This gay woman's not going back to those times. No, thank you. That wouldn't be pretty.
All right, Stacy, I'll go with you. Let's go.
Just time travel. Just back there a little bit and come back up.
For a little while.
So I have a question, because I always I'm trying to think of questions that people that always ask me, because obviously we're here talking to you, but there's so many people that are going to be watching this. And what is the number one things that they ask? That was one of them. Number two is always, oh my God, what's the scariest thing you ever experienced? And what was the funniest thing you've ever experienced? So I'm going to give it over to you.
Oh, me. Oh my goodness. Well, funny. I experience funny every day.
Funny. It's all funny. It's all funny.
Yeah, funny is every day. Scary, I don't necessarily, I'll tell you what spiritualism did for me. It actually took the fear out. So I'll tell you a little bit about me. My parents bought a restaurant in Wisconsin that was haunted. It was it's been in books, all of this. And I didn't know about spiritualism at the time, but there were things happening there. Shadow figures, the door would open and all of us would be like,
knives flying across the room.
Things flying across. So I, because I was intrigued, of course, my parents couldn't get enough of me, and I would just call all these paranormal research groups. I'd be like, come to this place and check it out and tell me what's going on. But I always knew that the scary aspect, like how they try to make it so scary and, oh my gosh, negative entity. And, I never knew that never felt right to me. Like, it's like, no, but yet there's movement, not losing my mind. And then somebody did an EVP one time, I guess. If you're going to say scariest, this would probably be it. They were doing EVPs and they said, well, because the spirits that are here know you so well and hear your voice every day, why don't you ask the questions? So, I'm like, what year is it? Blah, blah, who's the president? All those kinds of things. And when they played it back, I heard a man's voice and it said, get out, like clear as day in this room. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Right?
I didn't tell you this, but Leanne has one of the largest paranormal groups in New York.
Oh, cool.
I'm enjoying this part. This is awesome.
So you totally get it.
Yeah.
And there were so many things explained there. And I just kept, like, I always talked to my grandpa when he passed when I was in kindergarten. So I always felt this connection, but I couldn't really talk. Well, I didn't think I could talk to the people that were in my parents' place, right? Well, then I discovered, somebody said one day, a friend of mine goes, hey, you want to go to Lilydale? It's where, like, have you seen this No One Dies in Lilydale series? And I'm like, what is that? So that's when I got introduced to spiritualism 14 years ago and haven't turned back since, right? But so I guess that might be the scariest, but then I just realized it's actually the people who built the building, and they just want to know that they're there. Like they're, it's not like this scary haunted building, I shouldn't say that. Oh, I just said that publicly, probably. Well, it's still haunted in Wisconsin. Go visit the place.
You just ruined all its marketing. Oh my God.
Well, I guess that would be probably the scariest. Funniest? Oh, I don't even know where to start.
We have some parallels, I just realized. So, and Billy Joe had asked a question that you just answered, which is what brought you to be interested in spiritualism and had you wanting to learn more? So you were just talking about Lilydale, and I realized we had a little parallel here. So what brought me to it, and what was also my most terrifying moments, happened in Casadega, Florida.
Oh, great history there. Yeah.
So I have been getting messages all my life, and we all think we're crazy. My spirit guide from the time I was a kid had been talking to me. I was bawling once as a kid, and my mother said, what's wrong? I had taken a bath. I said, I want my Sammy. And she said, you're Sammy. I had a worm that I found in the yard. I put it in my pocket, and I named it Sam after my spirit guide.
Aww.
But I ended up going to Casadega, Florida. It's like, hey, you want to go for the weekend? I'm like, sure. So we're going up there, and are you excited? And I'm like, well, yeah, we're going away for the weekend. Well, you don't sound excited to go to Casadega. I said, yeah, I am. I don't know. I've never been there, but we're going away for the weekend. It's all good. So once Casadega was explained to me, I said, oh, well, I just want to know that I'm not crazy. So we get to Casadega, we check into the bed and breakfast, we go to DeLand to eat, and the ice chest, the thing had popped open, so water had leaked, and it was really cold that night, and my hoodie was drenched. So I went in and I asked the lady, I said, could you please put this in the dryer? And she said, sure. And there was another woman sitting there eating, and the woman, I'll never forget it as long as I live. The woman's eating. She turns around. She looks up at me, looks back, she eats more, looks back, and she says, you're not crazy. They're talking to you. Girl, you never saw somebody fly up a flight of stairs, open the door, go in, slam the door, and put their back up against the door so fast in all your life. I was like, oh. So the next day, okay, I'm walking down the street, and this lady, we pass, and she's passed me, and she says, excuse me, and I turned around, I said, me? And she said, yes. She said, you're not crazy. They're talking to you. Now, let me tell you, if I had somewhere to go, You would have seen me like I had a lit rocket that I was riding. Okay, I would have been like, whoa. So I had a reading scheduled. I walked in, and the same person does my readings even till today. I go once a year. And so I walk in and I sit down, and she's like, you know, you're going to be doing this for your work and da 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 and da 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 da. And she stops and she says, you know, you're not crazy. They're talking to you, right?
Wow.
Now, if I could have had the ground open up and suck me in at that moment, I would have. But that's what got, and then right after that, I went to the service, the service, and that's what got me hooked.
Yeah.
Love
Yep,
it.
hook, line, and sinker. Absolutely. I am in it, you know, and I think like, I even laugh because I think in the spirit world, I'll still be promoting spiritualism. Like, I'll be like, and
in it to win it, baby.
I got 2 questions.
Yes, Lisa.
Okay, so you know, with the tapping, and the girls, you know, communicated that way. And we're talking about, you know, the mediumship, how we have to pray and meditate to get there. It seemed like they just went, snap, they're there, and this is what it is. I mean, I'm going to assume they didn't meditate. They're young, you know, and how were they communicating like that, where people like us need to meditate and try to get there? It'll take longer.
You want to take that first and then I'll take it?
sure. So however you want. I'm
Yeah, you go first.
okay. So the tappings or rappings can also be known as a physical, because there's 2 types of mediumship. Technically, there's 2 categories for mediumship. Mental mediumship, which is the evidential, proving the continuity of life by saying, you know, Lisa, can I come to you? And then describing a loved one who has crossed over. That's a mental form of mediumship. Healing can also be mental. Bringing forth guides, mental mediumship, right? But then there's this category of physical phenomena, which is seen, heard, felt, expressed physically. So seen with our physical senses, not our spiritual senses. You know, I always think mental mediumship is a little more spiritual senses. Physical. So did the sisters were they born mediums? My opinion would be yes, but they were acutely aware of the wrappings, which then proved the continuity, and they developed their mediumship. They sat, they worked, but the original wrappings,
Okay.
that were heard in the home, I believe, this is my opinion, right? That was physical mediumship, and the girls responded to it. So that moment that you had, that aha moment where you said, oh, I get this, I want to develop this, that's what the girls did. They took the wrappings, they communicated with the wrappings, and then they continued to develop their mediumship. So, I mean, that's, Randi, what about you? That would be my opinion.
First of all, I would say that all kids are open. I feel that we're all born open, and it's through everyday life that we start shutting down, and then we have to learn to reopen. Okay. Right. I also believe that there was, how many times do I tell you guys that there's universal law, the universe has a plan, and there's no deviating from the universe's plan. The universe had a plan to start a movement, and it utilized them. You know, why didn't it utilize the parents? Because the kids were more open. And especially back then, because we didn't have softball, baseball, martial arts, dance, going to grandma's, and everything else that we have today. So they stayed open, in my mind, longer. But go ahead.
I was going to say, and they worked longer too. They didn't have TVs to entertain them. They would sit, like, that's why it's the parlor. They would sit in the parlor for hours developing their mediumship.
Right, exactly. you know, because they didn't have everything that we have to you know, waste time and, you know, be mentally numb with, you know, mindless TV and what have you. I guarantee you that they were sitting outside and they were doing whatever. And through that, it started developing. You know, the universe utilized them.
Okay,
Yeah.
and my next question is, I saw, you know, on the website, you have churches and camps. So what is the camps all about versus, I mean, the church, you know, we go to church, that kind of thing, but I wanted to know more about the camps and how you can get involved or go to them. And is there a cost associated with that?
So, yeah. So, you know, again, kind of going back into the history and how this all developed. So like, you know, it from, you know, 1848 to about 1857, there was this kind of like, you know, they call it the wildfire that just kind of spread all across. And camps were originally kind of formed as a meeting place, back to what Randi was saying. In those times, you know, summer was the vacation. You know, you would go away from your home for months, 2 months, and you would come to these camps that would have speakers, Lilydale, Cassadaga, right? They would have, Susan B. Anthony spoke in Lilydale for the women's suffragette movement, right? So these, again, it was back to the movement. So these camps would get qualified speakers of even, not even just spiritualism, right? But just the freedom of humanity discussions. And they would have hundreds of thousands of people that would come. And then you would stay at camp and you would get readings, you'd sit in circle, you'd get healings, you'd go to services. Like they, you know, had basically a whole program, you know, like a summer program of learning and developing, and you would take that back home. And then the rest of the year you would practice what you learned at camp and go to your local church. A lot of churches closed over their camp season. Ironically, there's a big connection to Cassadaga and Lilydale. For example, Lilydale in New York's lake is called Cassadaga's Lake, because from my understanding and what I have learned from the history is the Lilydale season was in the summer and the Florida season was in the winter. So those who, right? Is that right, Randi?
Okay, so here's my knowledge, and I'm not going to swear to you guys it's 100% accurate. There was a man, and right now his name is slipping me.
Colby? Are you thinking of Luther Colby?
I think so. And he received a message from Spirit to go and get some land and homestead it and make a spiritualist camp. And so he got the land for Cassadaga. And then he tried to make it a spiritualist camp, and it just really wasn't taking off. And there were 2 women from Lilydale, and oh my goodness, I haven't thought about this for a long time, so the files are like way back there. I don't remember their names off the top of my head. When you know what, by the time we have class, it'll probably pop back in my memory bank. Anyways, they had a message to take the train and you know, look for a particular sign and to get off there. And they took the train, they came down to Florida, and they never saw the sign. And I think the sign was Wilson Railroad, if I remember correctly. Something like that. Anyways, so later on, the railroad was sold, and that's what it became. And a traveler had gone to Lilydale and talked about the railroad, and the 2 ladies were like, huh? And they got back on, and they saw the sign, they got off, and that's how Cassadaga was formed. That's what you'll learn if you're in Cassadaga, by the way. So Lilydale was the summer camp, and Cassadaga became the winter camp because of, you know, inclement weather.
Yeah. And like Maine, you know, there's a bunch of different camp areas, and it was a place too where, you know, like within Wisconsin, for example, there were 22 churches at one time. So they would all meet at camp. This was a way to be with like-minded individuals. And a lot of these really great mediums, they traveled to all of these different camps, you know, so from coast to coast. Peebles, who is kind of one of my favorite pioneers, is known as the world a missionary of spiritualism, traveled the world twice, teaching spiritualism, but he would go from camp to camp, church to church, state to state, promoting. So there's quite a few active camps, and I would suggest that you definitely look them up, visit them if you can, and just even support them, because, the sad part is we're not meeting like this anymore. We're not, like, Randi said, we live this life of do that we forget to be. And a lot of our camps and a lot of our churches are dwindling because we're not taking the time to sit not only with spirit, but sit with one another, because that's important too.
There's a lot of spiritualist churches I hear of that are lucky to get 15 people, at service.
Yeah.
And the movement really needs to start back up. People need to expand so that we can live in a better place.
Absolutely. Did that answer your question, Lisa? I hope. We tend to go off on these tangents.
It answered it. Thank you.
And there's different camps. There's Camp Chesterfield. There's one in Maine.
There's a couple in Maine, actually. There's the Madison camp. Actually, states had associations too, if you really want to look at the structure and history of it all. There was a lot of states that had, most of them had state associations, which would have been, if you would, kind of like a ladder rung. So you had the national, and then, but then you had the state association, then you had the individual camps and the individual churches type of thing. But yeah, there's Chesterfield, there's that's in Indiana, but there's Wanawak in Wisconsin, which is a great camp. There's Cherry Valley in Illinois, Lilydale in New York, Madison in Maine. I know I'm probably missing like 4 or 5 right now, and I should be ashamed. I should probably pull up the list. I think there's Camp Edgewood in Washington. Here they all come. Now they're coming back.
Yes, George.
I have a quick question. Is there a place where, and maybe I missed this, you may have actually said this, but is there a place where you can go to find out about where all these camps are? We talk a lot about what's going on the East Coast. I live in the West Coast between South and Northern California. And, we have Agape, the Agape Center for all the very spiritual people, right? That's where everyone wants to go. But is there a place that you can go to find places that are near you that you can attend and strengthen your abilities?
Yeah, so the nsac.org website has a directory of all of its camps and churches. There's quite a few churches in California, and Harmony Grove, I think, is an independent spiritualist camp now, but they're also in California. I just don't know where, so you'll have to excuse my geography is bad. But nsac.org has a list of all of the camps and churches. And then you would also, with Google, I am so, excited about Google, but really spiritualist camp. I found some that I didn't even know Nebraska had one. And I just found out recently Nebraska had one. I don't think it's there anymore, but they had one. And now I'm like, well, now I need to know the history of that. But
you're excited about Google, and I walk around in my house telling Google, shut up.
No, I'm always looking, and there's some great information. There's some great information that is put out on the history of spiritualism on social media. Do I know with Facebook, you could just, really just search spiritualist camp, spiritualist church. You'll see, hopefully find one close to you. The problem is they're just not, it's not a problem. We're growing. We're going to grow, and there's going to be a spiritualist church on every corner. We're getting, we're getting there, but I know sometimes it's hard in certain states, but the thing is what's great about spiritualism too, and I guess a positive from this, this COVID that we've been living in is, there's a bigger call now for unity. I'm hoping the camps start thriving again, because now that we've all met each other, like now don't we want to see each other in person and sit in circle, you know, like, oh, come on, let's do it, you know. So we could start, we could revitalize the camps, right? Let's get together and plan weekends when we can all travel and be together again. And
Hey, Stacy.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a good one.
Okay.
I think NSAC needs to jump on this.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Okay.
Is there a national convention for mediums?
There is actually a national convention.
Boom!
So let me tell you two different things now. So the NSAC, the National Spiritualist Association of Churches, does have a yearly convention, but it does deal with the business aspect of, you know, it's business and fun and learning, okay? Because we do have, you know, we are an organization, so we have business that we have to take care of. You know, the one thing I love about spiritualism, like our 9 principles, they have changed over the years because they're just principles, they're guidelines on how we believe our truth is. And when our truth changes, we change. So these conventions are where we discuss, do we still believe this? Do we affirm it? Do we want to change it? And I think that's really a fantastic, I personally love, of course, the conventions because I get to see all the people from all the different camps and churches and kind of run the business. It's actually October this next coming year. It'll be on the website, nsac.org, and it's in Phoenix, Arizona. And we always have the first Monday.
I don't want to go to Phoenix.
Suck it up, Buttercup. That's where it is.
It changes every year. I mean, it changes every year we go. So this year we're going to Phoenix. Next year we're going to Tacoma, Seattle area, Washington. So maybe we need to come to Florida.
Yeah,
maybe you want to have us. We could all come down.
Yeah, we could go to the Broward Convention Center.
Okay, well, we'll figure it out.
We can take over Fort Lauderdale, and then people won't think that I'm crazy because I walk through the grocery store talking to Spirit, and people ask me, "Are you talking to yourself?" No, I'm having a board meeting with Spirit because we're planning a Spirit convention.
Spirit, yeah, Spiritualist convention.
Yeah, so we're planning the convention. Just please ignore me.
And then to plug just a little bit of where I work too. So the Morris Pratt Institute, I don't know if any of you've ever heard of it, but the Morris Pratt Institute is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it started in 1902 by a gentleman named Morris Pratt, who went to a medium and got this fantastic reading that kind of blew him away, right? That aha moment. Then continued to go to the medium, and the medium gave him and a couple others in the circle a little word of advice about maybe buying some land in northern Wisconsin, that it might be a good idea. And so they did. And he said, if I made money off of this, I commit to the education of spiritualism. Well, needless to say, this was like in I think it was around 1899 that he purchased the land with 2 other people, and it ended up being the largest iron ore mining in the Wisconsin-Canada borderline, and he made $200,000 with his a couple $100 investment. So if you can only imagine what that's like in terms of
Today.
right.
I gotta have a talk with my spirit later because the most they've done is told me to put the Oreos down, turn right instead of left. Like we gotta have a talk.
I didn't say it, but not really a whole lot. No, I'm just
Right?
Now, Stacy, I'm going to be 100% honest. I didn't know about this mediumship convention, but here's what I think. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Because I mean, like, boom.
I'm boom.
Like, I think we need to have it where there's like a fair, like Ferris wheels and, you know, merry-go-rounds and, you know, like
I'm in.
we need to have fun at this convention too.
If Joanne is on, if she's
She
still on
is.
Facebook watching me, I am nothing but the ball of energy and fun. I bought my blow up unicorn costume to wear to this convention, so I am I'm all for a Ferris wheel. Like I really am.
Come to Rochester, I'll hook us up with a Ferris wheel.
Yeah,
people.
see,
I love
I'm
it.
saying you and I have the same kind of energy, so we need to really invigorate this convention, and we need to make it like fun.
About those
Yeah.
giant sumo wrestling outfits. Those are fun.
Well, maybe okay, so now I do have to say that there are a lot of, well, I think we should figure something out. We need to figure it out. We'll get a camp. We'll start something. We got to think about what it is.
We'll meditate about it tonight.
Absolutely. Connect.
Yeah, we need to have a place where we can go to workshops and we can do demonstrations. You know, I love to do demonstrations. Most of us do.
Yeah.
But we also have to have fun.
Well, okay, so now I'm plugging again. I'm such a plugger, but I can't help it because I do love I do love me my NSAC and my Morris Pratt. But we do have the National Spiritualist teacher. It's a degree that you can get if you join the NSAC. We have a club of teachers, and we're putting together some weekends of kind of what you're talking about, just like intensive training weekends.
That's
Yeah, like
awesome.
let's take over P-Town or something.
Why not?
They ain't
my
seen nothing
word.
coming till they see us coming, right?
Or we can take over Martha's Vineyard and have a fair at the same time.
Gosh.
Yeah.
And disco
Us-
dances, you know, I mean, we could have fun.
Oh, you are my people. You are my
Uh-huh.
I was thinking Coachella. I was thinking even something bigger. I mean, come on, we got to throw some stars in there as well.
We should do a cruise.
Hey, there you go. Well,
What about the COVID?
we can't have a carnival on a cruise.
What about the
Yeah,
bug?
you
You know what? We can surf, you know, they have those wave machines. I mean, we can do all kinds. Yeah, that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Big slide thing too.
Joanne, can we get on that, please?
Oh, I'm sure she's rolling her eyes at me right now as we speak.
Probably both of us. She probably is like, I'm going to wring their necks.
Somebody did ask a good question though. They wanted to know if Morris Pratt offered online courses.
We are in the that's in the works. Absolutely. We're a correspondence course right now. And honestly, and back to the plug, but it's a 30 lesson course, and it teaches it teaches the basic facts of history. Like I said, you guys, to study the history, if it's something that you're really interested in, I haven't even tipped the iceberg, and I've been, researching forever, but it's a great foundational course on what modern spiritualism is. From the history to the science to the philosophy to the religion aspect of it to the different types of mediumship to like different categories of mediumship. So it's a correspondence course through email, but we are looking at getting online, maybe even having some classes online. And it's a building in Milwaukee, which I live by. So we're also looking at doing in-person classes twice a year. So if you guys want to come up and visit me in Milwaukee,
Go to a carnival.
we're a couple days before, because we'll have a party before or a party after,
And eat cotton candy.
Absolutely.
You see, look at this. See? Oh, and I love him. A cruise would be amazing. And Joanne said she'll work on it.
Oh, perfect.
We may not get our necks wrung. Okay, Leanne, Michelle, do you guys have any questions, or anybody else have any questions?
No, I think the only thing I have to add is just that, spiritualism really kind of, I was raised in a home that wasn't very religious, not that we didn't believe, but, so when you're growing up and you have these gifts and you're not really sure what to do with them, you're not really sure even who you're talking to because you're not being raised necessarily religiously, it really gave me that home, to say, well, I do have a religion. I might not have this over the top belief like some people do, but I do believe in a source. I do believe in these things, and look, here's how I can prove it. It's comforting. And I think right now in this world that we're all living in, I do think we need to get back to our roots a little bit with this. I really do.
And oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, in all seriousness too, like it is just so comforting to know that we are eternal and we will be reunited with all of those people that we love so dearly. Mm-hmm. And then what that does for you as an individual is so fantastic. to our development. I think it's awesome. Like, you know, we can at least have fun. Absolutely. That's, I think, a mandatory, but it also brings that huge sense of comfort and simple. I always say it's the KISS method. Keep it simple, spiritualist.
Mine was called a little different when I was growing up, but stupid was in there somewhere.
And you know, I think that we all need to know the history, because like I was telling you earlier, Stacy, a lot of people come into spiritualists and they become spiritualists, but they never get to know the history.
Yep.
And, you know, there's a lot involved, and there's a lot of people that paved the way for us to have the freedoms to walk down the aisle of the supermarket and tell people, oh, just ignore me. I'm having a board meeting with Spirit because we're planning a Spirit convention. And, you know, not have the guys in the white suits come lock us up. A lot of people paved that road.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And Leanne, don't feel alone. I grew up in a Jewish family that ate bacon.
I love bacon. Yeah.
Bacon.
I know.
And Stacy, what you were saying about being reunited with our loved ones, I have to tell you that I have people in spirit that I'm far closer with now that they've crossed over than I ever was.
Yeah.
That same time I was in Casadega that freaked me out. When I went to that service, they also had a class that night, and I didn't know what it was, so I just went. Well, let me tell you, it was a mediumship class. And so I was kind of looking around, and they said, you're new here. Here, sit down right here. And it was kind of like musical chairs. And the mediums kept moving. And every single medium brought in my grandfather on, well, I was born to two women back in the 60s, so we're a kind of progressive family. The non-biological one, her dad came in, and when he was alive, I was scared to death of him. I was petrified of him. And it happened to be that parent's birthday that day. So it's no wonder he was coming in. It was his daughter's birthday. And the messages that I got that day enabled me to have an incredible relationship with him. And he was already gone, you know, a couple decades. You know, it was already on the other side, but now I have an amazing relationship with him.
Yeah.
And that's what spiritualist, you know, that's what it has to offer us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And a lot of other benefits, you know, a lot of others. But I think that everybody owes it to what they get from being a spiritualist to learn some of the history of the people that paved the way.
Absolutely. And just the movement. I mean, we were for equality over and over and over again. Some brothers weren't really brothers. Do you know what I mean? Like we welcomed everybody and we stood for everybody. And, you know, I think that is powerful and it's needed. You know, I feel spirit. I feel them handing us the torch, and we have to grab it. We have to grab it, and we have to move forward. Absolutely.
And I think another thing we owe to spiritualist movement is to be a better spiritual being today than we were yesterday.
Absolutely.
And that doesn't mean that we're not going to have slips, because, you know, we are having a human experience. But if we work really hard every day at being a better spiritual being today than we were yesterday, the world's going to be a great place.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Absolutely.
Michelle, what about you? Michelle, AKA Jack. You got anything?
I don't have anything, no.
That's unusual.
I know. I'm struggling. I'm taking it in. Just taking it in. I'm being a sponge tonight.
Okay, you're allowed to, because you're normally not a sponge, so you're allowed a night. All right. Well,
Okay,
know-
here I got a question.
you just said no. You can't take it back. Go ahead.
What? Okay, if I want to learn more about spiritualism, let's say, what's a good books to start with? Or what what direction do I go?
Here. Of Course in Ignorance, Volume 1, it's only 1,000 pages. Of Course in Ignorance, Volume 2, it's only 1,000 pages. And the Psychic Stream, it's and Cat here, it's also 1,000 pages. So, that's a good place for you to start.
That's a good place to start.
Great.
You know, absolutely. I'm gonna say though, I'll give you a few other ones actually that are a little more simpler. Again, it depends on what your interest is, right? Because there's great books about the pioneers. Arthur Finley was the author of the books that you just held up, but Sir Arthur Conan Doyle wrote The History of Spiritualism, volumes 1 and 2. That's a good, if you want to know about some of these pioneers, if you want to kind of know about how the movement started, that's a great book. There is a thin book that was written by Mercy, I always say her name wrong, but Callwater. Oh well, anyways, it's called The History, Hydesville, The History of Hydesville, which is a great book. If you want to know about how the movement formed, there's some great books that way. If you want to know about living the religion or the philosophy of spiritualism, I have to recommend Marilyn Autry wrote a book about natural laws. It's The River of Life. It's a great book because as spiritualists, we believe in natural and spiritual laws. It's the order of the universe. So the more we learn how to live within those laws, the easier. There's your cheat sheet, George. The more we understand natural and spiritual laws, the easier it is. They're just really hard to understand, but that's a really good book. Ron Nagy, he is the historian from the Lilydale camp. He wrote some fantastic books about, the Bang sisters, the history of Lilydale. There's Marilyn Autry actually is from Cassadaga, and she wrote a book about the history of Cassadaga. So, depending on what you want to look for, but those are a few just real basic ones that I find, they're in my library, but I have a lot in my library because there's certain books just on certain people, like, Estelle Roberts, and I just bought the book by, that's all about Lenora Piper, so these are all mediums that, you can kind of learn about, so.
It's funny that you brought up the Doyle books because I was talking to NSAC earlier.
Yeah.
And because my manual's outdated and Stacy forced me to buy a new book. But I also am going to get that two-part series just to have in my library. Of course I'm going to read it, not just put it in my library, but to have in my library. And there was a couple others that you mentioned. So yeah. Michelle,
this is a good one.
Yeah, that's the one that I just had to order today. That's the new one to this one. And you see all my tabs and yeah. It's well used.
It's a great resource for what spiritualism is and what it means to be a spiritualist. Absolutely.
Especially if you have a church, it's pretty important. So Michelle, what I would recommend that you do is that you call up NSAC and order whatever it is you want. And Stacy told me this today herself, and ask for a catalog. And that way you can go through the different, so if you order a book you want, then you can, like if you order the Doyle set, which I think they're like $20 each. It's not a big investment. Then just ask them to include a catalog. And then from there you can look through and see what you want.
I mean, there's books on just trumpet mediumship. So say if say you're interested in just learning about trumpets, or you're just learning, you just want to learn about healing. They have Harry Edwards books, so I would definitely get a book catalog. Yeah, because I think I own almost everyone.
And NSAC has trumpets too, you guys, because I have 2 of them right over there. And Joanne just put NSAC's phone number, which is 716-595-2000. And I have 2 trumpets right over there that I had ordered from NSAC. Joanne helped me with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie.
So Michelle, should we start a book club?
We're in trouble now. Yeah.
We have one. We have an online spiritual book club.
All right, I'm in. I need the invite.
It's on Tuesday nights. I have one.
Fantastic.
However, the book that they chose to do this time, and you know what? Maybe we'll do Doyle's books next. The book that they chose this time was The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity.
Great book. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So we're probably halfway through that one. So maybe when that's done, maybe we'll do the Doyle books. What do you guys think?
I'm thinking somebody better start cleaning the house and cooking dinner, because I'm gonna eat every night of the week. Do some of this stuff.
I would have you guys do this one, except I know that none of you would stick with the plan because you guys would sit there and read it all the way through.
I do tend to cheat.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, me, I like to read it all the way through, and I've been really good.
You have been. You have been. I'm proud of you.
I can. Somebody else can too. So there you go.
Absolutely.
That one is hard, though. Even I would have trouble with that one. Yeah. I would have trouble not reading it through. All right. So if
book clubs a week.
Wait, what?
You'll have 2 book clubs a week then.
Right.
Same book, chapter, and then 2 days later you have another one.
Yeah.
Are you trying to work me to death?
Yeah. It's just a
Hey,
thought.
there is no death. There are no death.
Yeah, but the
Problem solved. Problem solved. Look at
He's
that.
trying to get me to transition sooner. Which I'd be okay with when they call, I'm there.
Mhm.
But if anybody doesn't have any more questions, then I think we'll start to wrap it up. This has been fun.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I've had a blast.
I told you earlier, I think we should do one a month on Spiritualist. There's so many topics. Are you down?
I'm totally down. Absolutely.
Okay, so you pick whichever Monday of the month you want, like the first, second, third, whatever it is, and that'll be Spiritualist Monday every month.
Yeah, I'll introduce you guys to some really cool pioneers, really fun, kind of crazy people that we can, honor and then help, keep paving the way for them by showing our respect. So absolutely, that'd be great.
And I'm in Rochester, so you got to pick a Rochester one first. So.
I like
all right.
Well, you got California, you've got PA, you've got New York, and you have South Carolina.
Oh, perfect. I'll find a medium from every state.
There we go.
That'll be perfect. Well, you're from Rochester, New York, right?
Uh-huh.
If you say Rochester, yeah. So
Yep.
huge.
The Fox family.
The Fox sisters would be the best. I would love to do more. I'd love to learn more about them. It's amazing.
Yeah, I would love to talk more about them too, because I hate to say that, throughout their life, they got really picked on and had a bad life, but it wasn't because of the mediumship and the spiritualism that did that. It was the naysayers and the life that they had to live. So yeah, I would love to touch base and hopefully be able to take out some of the,
The stigma behind it.
Yeah. The stigma and the untruths behind it. Absolutely.
Okay, so next month is the Fox family.
All right, we're on it.
Woo!
All right, fabulous. So, if you guys enjoyed this video and you think somebody else will get value out of it, please like and share it. And Julie says Ohio too, please. We'll work on that, Julie.
Yeah.
So you have your list, right, Stacy? Okay.
I'm on it.
If you're watching this on YouTube and you got value from it, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button that's down below and the bell up top if you want to stay informed on what new topics we have coming up. And we do put out several. We put out 1 week. Oh, by the way, you guys, I think we're going to stop doing Facebook Live, but what we're going to do is have everybody go to Zoom, where that way we can see you when we talk to you. Okay, there's not going to be any charge. It's going to be just like this, but everybody can see each other. And I think it'll be more personal that way. So we'll be doing that soon, and I'll be talking to the crew about that in a minute. So we want to wish everybody a magical night. You all want to say good night?
Nice.
Bye, guys. Good night. Be safe.
Woohoo! All right.